Right, so I'm bright and early in the Logitech office just to show you this, Logitech's new Rally Board 65. It's the only one in the UK for right now, and it's hard to get a bit of time alone with it, which is why I'm nice and early. I'm going to show you around. The clue's in the name. It is a 65-inch infrared touchscreen with 20 points of touch, very responsive display. Works really well with the whiteboarding applications within the platform providers that it actually supports. Out of the box, it supports Microsoft Teams rooms on Android, Zoom rooms on Android, Google on Android will come later. It will also support Teams rooms on Windows and Teams rooms on Windows touchboard status later in the year. I realize there are a lot of touchscreen kind of enabled all-in-one room systems out there from multiple vendors. So don't take this one as just Logitech doing a I'll do it too kind of thing. What Logitech did was sit back and watch the market to see what others were doing well, not so well, and then decided to, let's say, up the ante. Starting with this, the camera. I'm gonna zoom the camera in, just give me a second. So there you go. So this camera array is a brand new kind of camera system. You can see the main aperture there. It's actually a 4K camera with a 1-inch sensor, which means it lets lots of light in, gives you crisp, sharp images. It's a digital camera, it doesn't have optical zoom, but it will actually perform as well. With that 1-inch sensor, it will perform as well as an optical sensor up to about 7 meters in my testing. Plus, still great quality even beyond that. Over here, it's actually got a second sensor. It's actually a depth mapping sensor, and this actually will help with a bunch of other features I'll go through in a second. Right, so let's talk specifics. That depth mapping sensor is going to help it do a few really cool things. When you deploy a touchboard in an open area, for instance on a trolley, we've got the Rally Board cart here, you wheel it into an open area in an office. What you want to do is try and isolate as much as possible that meeting area you're wheeling it into. It's all well and good putting in a meeting room like this, where you can actually define the boundaries and the kind of borders by the fact that there are actually physical walls around it. Logitech released a feature called Camera Zones for all the CollabOS devices, which means you can actually independently left and right and also depth adjust the actual framing area. All that does is basically tell the camera to focus on stuff that's inside of that camera zone and not focus on anything outside. Great for open areas, also great for meeting rooms where you have a glass wall or multiple glass walls. What you don't want to do is start a meeting and have the camera start tracking people outside the room, just happen to be walking past that glass wall. So that's camera zones. Camera zones will obviously come to Rally Board. What the depth mapping sensor actually does is actually builds a 3D image or map of the space and all the objects in the space in its field of view. So it knows exactly where those objects are relative to itself. So it can be a perfect judge of all those distances. That depth mapping sensor will actually help the microphones develop another feature called mic zones. So as well as camera zones, mic zones actually focuses all of the audio inside of that camera zone area, and of course focuses the beams on the objects in that space that it's built the 3D map of. Then of course it's going to go one step further. So again, if you're putting this into an open area, what you want to do is focus the audio and the video inside of that artificial room you've created with camera and mic zones, but we go one step further and actually turn on something called depth blur. So what depth blur will do is actually create like a bokeh effect of everything outside of that camera zone and actually give it a blur effect. It does this at the hardware level. It's not dependent on Teams or Zoom or anything doing these things. It's doing it at the camera itself. What Logitech is calling this combination of features of camera zones, mic zones, and depth blur is a digital cocoon. So creating a digital cocoon around the meeting area that's actually important to your space. So in addition to this digital cocoon and all that kind of camera zone, mic zones stuff, depth blurring and all that kind of thing, obviously the camera is going to support things like Right Sight 2, where it gives you group framing, speaker focus, and of course grid view. So that's all about the camera. The audio It's the same microphone array. It's actually behind this kind of cloth panel here. It's the same microphone array as the Rally Bar Mini, Huddle, Meetup 2. So 6 beamforming mics with about 7 meters of pickup and a little bit beyond that. It also supports Right Sound 2, which means it's got great acoustic echo cancellation. It's got some auto gain control for loud and softer speakers, people that are further and closer to the microphones. And of course, my favorite feature, if you've watched my other video where I picked up a drill and enlisted my family with keyboards and things, is the noise cancellation. Noise cancellation on the Logitech products is absolutely insane, and this will have all that packed in. In addition to the microphones, obviously there are speakers, there are stereo speakers, there's 2 woofers and tweeters, 1 on each side. The speakers themselves are ported to give you some extra amplification and that sort of thing. So it's great in open areas, but also great wall mounted, trolley mounted. Doesn't really matter where you put it. The audio is actually tuned to the whole kind of experience itself. Obviously touch boards and that kind of thing, the obvious use case is whiteboarding. So, you know, if you wanted to walk up and whiteboard, the best place to put the camera is above. Now, what if you wanted to deploy Rally Board in a meeting room? So Logitech has thought about different use cases. Obviously, whiteboarding is one. Meeting rooms are another use case entirely. Microsoft's program of Express Install, Logi is all over that with furniture from people like Heckler and of course Salamander to do that kind of very quick install without any tools and that sort of thing. Put the whole room together in under an hour. Believe it or not, the Rally Board actually qualifies as an Express Install device. Even right down to the installation. If you've ever unpacked a big screen TV, what you do is you pull these little plastic tabs out on both sides, you lift the big box lid off, and you put it to the side. Typically what you'll do, if you want to wall mount it or trolley mount it or whatever, is take the screen out of the box, put it on a table, on a blanket or something, put it on the floor so you can get at all the screw holes for your mounting hardware. What Logitech has actually done is you leave it in the box, there's some perforations in the base plate that you actually fold down, and it gives you access to all of the screw holes. If you want to put this on a credenza with the included legs, you just slide those in the bits of polystyrene and line up the screw holes and put the screws in. Then you get 2 people, it weighs 50 kilos, put it on your credenza, give it power and network, and then you can start your setup. If you wanted to wall mount it, it's got standard Visa mount points, a 400 by 400 Visa pattern, and of course you can get at those screw holes for the Visa pattern, again, while it's in the box. You put your Visa mounting hardware, obviously you put the other end on the wall, again, 2 people, give it power and network, and away you go with the setup. If you want to trolley mount it, of course you can buy any trolley that supports 400 by 400, and of course the weight. There are great trolley options from many different vendors, including a new one from Heckler that actually has manual raising and lowering, specifically designed for Rally Board. And of course Logi came out with their own trolley. If you saw my other video from ISE or my flipping video where I demonstrated the flipping action of the Rally Board on the Rally cart, you kind of know what I mean. Now, I didn't really go into specifics of why you'd want to flip Rally Board, but actually, as I said, if you want to stand up and draw at a board, then obviously camera placement above is the best place for obvious reasons. But if you wanted to deploy this in a meeting room, either on the trolley, a credenza, or the wall, putting the camera above is never a great idea. What you end up with is that CCTV shot over people's heads as people look underneath the actual camera to look at the content. So everybody's kind of being looked at from the top of their heads. So camera below is actually the best place to do it when you're actually deploying it in a meeting room. To make sure the camera has that natural eye gaze while you're in that meeting. Obviously it helps with the framing and those sort of things. So that's the whole point of the whole flip thing on the trolley. So if you're deploying this in an open area, what you can actually get is 2 meeting rooms in one. Camera above on this side would be your ideation, stand up and draw, maybe a chill out zone, that sort of thing. But on the other side, you can actually put in a board table, you know, with chairs and that sort of thing. And then you've got 2 ways to use it, either in different meetings or actually even in the same meeting. So if you start up a meeting in Teams or Zoom or whatever, you can actually flip it while it's in the call, and everything will be inverted automatically thanks to an inbuilt accelerometer. To flip it, of course, I did that out of the video. All you do is pull a little lever here, lift it, and let it go. And that's it. So it wasn't really enough to focus on just the great camera, the depth sensor, the great speakers, the whole stand up and draw thing, the whole flipping ability, the new cart. All of those things actually make Rally Board 65 an outstanding product. So of course Logitech could have stopped there. Logitech were actually developing another product at the same time as Rally Board, and they decided to put that product inside of Rally Board. That new product, which was announced on 22nd of January, is called Logitech Spot. I haven't done a video or anything on that because I haven't actually got my hands on one outside of ISE. Hopefully in the next few months or so, I'll get my hands on one and I can talk you through it. So Logitech Spot is actually a radar sensor, but with also a bunch of environmental sensors. Those environmental sensors will actually measure the room health. So measuring things like oxygen levels, carbon dioxide, pressure, VOCs, and of course particulate matter. And actually focusing on the actual health of the room is very critical. Of course, temperature is one of those sensors as well. You've ever been in a meeting room where it's really hot, starting to sweat, it leads to some sort of fatigue. As CO2 levels go up in a meeting room, what happens is obviously the oxygen level is dropping. Have you ever seen anybody nod in a meeting? It isn't because the meeting is boring, or maybe it is because the meeting is boring, but it's probably also likely to be the cause of a CO2 saturation in the room as well. So what they did was they packed all the sensors from Spot inside up here. So there's a radar sensor here, the environmental sensors are over on the side. The radar sensor will actually help it with kind of person and room detection, but it's not a PIR detector. It uses radar, which means it's a lot more accurate. With a normal PIR sensor, like on the Logitech Tap or that sort of thing, you can actually fool it by moving very slowly or sitting still. With radar, it will actually focus on even things like, you know, your breathing as your chest moves in and out, your heartbeat, that sort of thing. So it's much more accurate in detecting people. And with that radar sensor, obviously you can focus on things like, you know, making the board actually go into a deep sleep mode when it doesn't detect anybody in the area, obviously helping with the sustainability creds. You can also do things like pair it with Logitech's room booking solution, which lives in sync, and do things like auto book and release. All right, so one more thing I want to show you before I finish this video up is around the back. Right, so around the back of Rally Board, obviously not the most exciting place to be, but you can see it's nice and clean and tidy. There's these nice cloth panels that actually cover up all of the wiring and the cabling, but I'm gonna show you what that looks like in a second. You've also got the normal buttons that are on the back of a Rally bar or something over here to get at the reboot and that sort of thing. And then on the back, you've got these magnetic kind of dimples to actually store the passive pens when they're not in use. These little circles over here are actually for accessories. So I mentioned that you will actually be able to support Teams rooms on Windows, Zoom rooms on Windows. Obviously you want to mount a PC. So all you do is take that accessory cover off, which is just a magnetic thing, and it gives you access to the screw lock thing. So there's one accessory which is actually a Visa mount plate for a compute. So you just Visa mount it with the standard 100 by 100 pattern, you put it in, twist lock it, run the cables down the channels on the side. The other accessory that's available is actually a cable hook. So if you want to use things like BYOD and that sort of thing with the 5-meter active cable supporting DP alt mode, what you don't want is that cable just draped across the floor when it's not in use. So what you can do is actually just coil it up and hang it on the cable hanger. It will of course also support things like Logi Extend, so if you're in an Android mode but you want to extend that BYOD capability to a longer room, then obviously you could support Logi Extend. You mount it here, you run all the cables under the floor over to the table to the other side to give you that other USB-C connectivity. All right, so I mentioned these kind of cloth panels to hide all of the stuff. They're just either magnetic or actually little kind of things you just pull and you actually get access to all the cable management and that sort of thing. This one just has a couple little clips, and again you just lift it off And then it's got one more cable cover here. So if I lift that off, it actually gives you access to all the ports. So power and network, of course, an extension port for future use, 3 USB-A's for things like additional cameras, Logi Scribe, tap consoles, that sort of thing. HDMI TV, HDMI to TV, so that's HDMI out. So if you wanted to use it with a second display, having a dual screen Teams or Zoom room, HDMI in for content ingest, USB-C, as I said, that's how we support the Teams Room's PC that would be mounted there, or also Logi Extend, which would use the HDMI in and the USB-C. And of course, it supports that single cable BYOD thanks to the 5-meter active cable that supports DP alt mode. And then we've also got a line out. So a line out is actually used for things like hearing aid systems and that sort of thing for accessibility. So the first product that Logi has actually thought about doing that. All the cables are all hidden behind that panel, as I said, and they go through this kind of loop system that gives you tension relief. So what you don't want is all the cables to kind of just be willy-nilly kind of routed all over the place. And what happens if you want to flip it? What you want to make sure is that none of the cables are actually under tension. So you can see they actually go through this elaborate kind of cable loop system and actually go down the legs to kind of keep them out of the way. And then when you're done cabling everything in, again, you just put this magnetic cover on. There you go, that's on. Take this other thing, slide it in, make sure it's clipped in place. And then this last panel here just magnetically attaches to the top. And everything's nice, neat, tidy, and out of the way. Right, and that has been Logitech Rally Board. Thanks for watching. Catch you next week.